Hey, Raz.
Hey, Michael.
We're back.
Are you ready for the next episode?
I am. I'm very much ready for it. So we did some house cleaning. We shipped episode 16, which is out. We don't have a number for you yet because it depends on what we ship. But across the table from us is Michel. We know a bunch of similar people, right? You just bumped into Borco.
Yeah.
You know my brother, but we have never met.
No, we've sort of passed each other a little bit, mainly sort of in the digital space, I think.
Talk around each other on LinkedIn.
Yeah, mainly that.
But I have always been wanting to talk to you, and this is great. So you're mostly known in the media advertising circles with WPP Group.
Yeah. I think especially since I moved to Singapore, so I did about, it's probably close to 10 years WP, mainly on the media side with Group M.
And you moved with them?
No, actually not. No, so I a bit of an interesting story, to be honest, how I got in Singapore, but it's
perfect.
I came here with an adtech, not edutech, but an adtech, the advertising tech company that no longer exists, a company called iWonder, which was in like rich media ad serving stuff. I came with them here in Singapore after I was running that in the Netherlands and in the Middle East out of Dubai.
What year was it?
2000. So I made a decision to move to Singapore in about 2009, I think. When I was on my way on holiday to Bali, I had a stopover in Singapore. And obviously there was sort of the time when there's sort of financial crisis in sort of the western part of the world, everywhere, but you feel it really there at that time. And I stopped over in Singapore, and I remember really well that I think it was on a Thursday or Friday or something, and I was walking through the CBD around lunchtime, and people were coming out for their lunch, and there was an energy. And I describe sort of the energy of almost like GDP growth.
Yeah.
So it's a bit weird, but if you come out of so much sort of negativity that Europe at that time obviously had, everything was negative. Everything in news was negative. And I felt this energy that I was sort of really excited about. So during that holiday, I started sort of thinking about a bit of a business plan. I was like, how can we launch our business in APAC? And then decided to move to Singapore a few years later.
Nice.
Then when I landed here with the business, the business got sold to one of the competitors. So it wasn't that active for the business here in APAC, but had some contacts within WPP, and then WPP Group M asked me to set up a business called Xaxis, which was their programmatic advertising business. Yep. So I built that from scratch into the region. Yeah.
So
across 13, 14 markets or something.
I remember Xaxis.
Is it like advertising, digital advertising?
Yeah.
Which type of advertising?
Yeah, it was sort of the first sort of programmatic advertising business. So it was all very data led, and we bought up media in bulk, and we enriched it with data and made it sort of targetable for audiences. And then through the Group M agencies, we sold that to advertisers.
Yeah, it was one of the first kind of marketplace driven things for Asia, though, right?
We were the largest pretty quickly. I think we launched, was that 13, 14 markets in less than 2 years.
Nice.
At the back, obviously, of having a foundational framework that sort of Group M, WP gives you that, so it makes it a bit easier. But yeah, we were pretty committed to that, and we doubled down on it pretty quickly. Yeah.
Nice.
So we jump fast.
Yeah,
but it's fine. It's fine. I want to go that direction because it is variety of roles in advertising and different companies. But tell us a bit more about how you run like S4 in APAC and what was the involvement over there.
Yeah, so after I did worked for Group M and did the Xaxis stuff, and I moved into other sort of Group M roles out of Singapore, and eventually sort of a chief growth officer role for sort of performance media group under Group M. This was around 2018, top of my head. That's when Martin Sorrell left WP to start up a new venture called S4 Capital. Reached out, and he asked me to join to set up S4 Capital in APAC. At that time, S4 Capital was hardly existing. We just went through sort of the first acquisitions of a company called Media Monks and a company of Mighty Hive. And then we sort of merged that together and did another globally around 32 other sort of acquisitions in sort of the 4.5 years that I was there. And I decided to leave the business about 2 years ago.
But you were there through the whole kind of acquire, build.
The first 4 years. Yeah. So that was I think the first couple of years were the exciting years of that, for sure. Yeah.
Got it. And then you kind of jump into doing your own things a little bit and 19 Volt. So maybe tell us kind of your view of how you're doing startups and 19 Volt, and because it's a little bit different than others.
Yeah, like so before I sort of joined Group MWBP, when I was sort of more in the adtech space as well, and I was a lot more sort of linked into to technology startups. Now, actually, I've never really saw myself as an agency guy, which is weird if you do close to 14 years of agency work. But within the agencies, I always was running the lesser so agency type businesses. Sounds a bit weird, but I would never run like a Mindshare or a MediaCom or these traditional media agencies. That's not me, and I would not have been the right person to run that either. So I was more on the, often more on the technology side of, what sits within the holding groups. Then, after doing, so 13, 14 years of, being part of that agency ecosystem, I have to admit that I have a little bit less confident and a little bit less passion for that side of the industry, or maybe even the whole sort of marketing communications industry. If I'm really honest, I think not sure if the models that these companies are built on, if they're sort of future proof. I think a lot of them obviously realize it as well, and with a lot of them, you see that their market caps obviously have been suffering throughout the years as well. The disruption of AI in that space is obviously significant.
Yeah,
and I think there is a lot of. I think agencies in general are a little bit in sort of a tough pack, right? On one hand, you're supposed to be like a partner and an ally of marketers and advertisers. The other hand, partnerships and relationships are, they're being used more as a sort of a vendor client than a partner, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's per se the right place to be in.
So do you think it's the culture that gave you the sense that, hey, I need to do something else, or technology? It's like the market?
I think the technology is disrupting a lot of things, right? And in all honesty, I think there's too many people in that side of the industry that are trying to hold on to be honest, just the sheer reason of existence of an agency, right? And my, being out there for a few years right now and sort of have a bit of a helicopter view on it, I just see too many people that are trying to make the agency model work in a new world, where I personally have my doubts if
it's even needed.
If it's even needed, in all honesty, right?
Because of the companies like Tabula or Outbrain or
no. Like that's those type of companies is sort of peripheral for me. Like I just in general, like. I mean, if you purely look at the function of an agency, technically they sit between an advertiser and a media owner. Let's just simplify it a little bit, right? Yeah. And an agency should help and advise the advertiser to, how to best spend their budgets to get the most reward, whatever the value is they want to get out of it, right? Returns on it. Yeah. But then, let's take digital, for example. It's a very sort of simplistic way of looking at it. But if 70 or 80% of your spend goes to 2 or 3 platforms, right, as it is now, with obviously with Meta and with Google and maybe a bit of Amazon, etc.
Yeah,
and all these companies who are extremely well funded, highly profitable, lots of people to have direct relationship with advertisers. You're sort of in that middle pack, and you're being squeezed on all sides. Yeah. Right, and I just don't think that's a long-lasting position to be in. If whatever you define and sort of try to create for yourself as incremental value that you deliver there. And I'm not saying that they don't deliver value, but it feels for me like a very sort of defensive position all the time.
Yeah.
Because the chance that an advertiser is going to spend more money with you next year is pretty slim. Like and I think generally we see that, the total pie that's being divvied up by agencies is not growing.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just more slices.
There's more slices, right? And there's consulting companies coming in, there's technology coming in for efficiencies, and there's a lot of sort of disruption there. And like, honestly, I think you want to be on the eating side, if you know what I mean, then be eating.
And I think social media has turned so much of it's on its head, right? We were talking about CRM systems as a side note, right? But one of the things was this amazing post where, if you're familiar with HubSpot, they did really, really well over many years of articles related to CRM and sales. Right. And that was their funnel, right? They had a really good, and in fact, it's in their product, right? The whole content generation leading to, but someone pulled up a chart of them over like 7 years, and it looks like a perfect like Point Reyes cliff of California. It's like literally, because people don't look for information that way anymore, right? They go to ChatGPT or...
I think I saw the post. I think I saw the whole SEO play. That's why we got too many similar contacts on LinkedIn because we see the same content.
Yeah, but it just kind of crushed that one model for how somebody attracts a user, just like traditional advertising. How much of it do we respond to? But yet, social media, it's the whole thing's been kind of turned on its head. So then, I guess agencies get involved in all of this, but even their traditional model is just not quite as relevant, right?
Yeah, and without sort of getting too stuck at this specific topic, I think in general, a lot of industries, are being disrupted, right? For multiple different reasons, and it's a very cyclical thing, right? And for me, it was the right time to leave the business for that as well. For me to wake up in the morning and work 14, 16, 18 hours, whatever is necessary, and be motivated and be passionate about something, I need to believe in it.
Yeah.
And if I no longer believe in the positioning of, not per se the company I'm part of, but maybe just the whole layer within that specific industry, then that's not the right place for me to be. I'm very excited still about the industry as a whole, and I'm happy I'm no longer operationally involved in the industry. I'm still, so a lot of my friends are in the industry, and I still think I know quite a few things around the industry, and I'm really happy in a more advisory role that I have with plenty of my friends who are running businesses in this space that, are asking for a bit of advice here and there, and through advisory commission positions or through board positions or whatever it is. And I really enjoy that because, being in the industry as long, I still enjoy that part. But I'm happy that I'm no longer operationally involved in it. Yeah,
I think it's an amazing segue to speak about 19 volts. So what happened over there? What's evolving?
Yeah, so I mean, when I sort of left as I described, sort of the corporate world, I also look back and say, and in all honesty, I didn't come out of it with, being the most balanced person in my life. I think I've sort of run myself a little bit into the ground throughout especially the last couple of years. Probably made some decisions in that sort of didn't help my mental and physical well-being as well. So I started, had a bit of time off, spent a little bit more time with family, started doing, as I was sort of given sort of things that I enjoy doing. And that sort of results in a sort of mix of initiatives that I try to do right now. Some of them more successful than others, but at least I wake up every day happy. Right. And it sounds like a small thing, but it's super important. And for me, it's like when it was a bit of probably sort of a combination of sort of luck and fate, whatever it is. But during COVID, as we all know, being based here in Singapore, we were all sort of a little bit more limited to our freedoms to say
kind of stuck.
Yeah. Kind of stuck here. I met several people. I met one of the people I met was one of my close nearby neighbors. There's a guy called Scott who is an entrepreneur, had been running different businesses throughout the different years. And what you do over a beer here and there, you start talking about, opportunities. And it's sort of timing and ambitions came together where we just started to riff off all kinds of sort of business ideas that we both had. The things you think about sometimes, but you put them on a shelf. You don't do anything with it because you're just busy with your day to day. You have no time for it. You don't free up your sort of the brain power for exploring these opportunities. And over a couple of nights, we sort of decided to dust off all the shelves that we had with sort of ideas and put them together. And it doesn't go overnight, but you start to sort of riff it a little bit. And out of that came a couple of ideas like maybe we should explore that. So the idea of 19 Volt as what we call venture builder, and I don't like the venture studio positioning as a venture builder. For us, it's a vehicle to explore multiple different ventures that, from the shelves that we had in our brains mainly. Yeah. And one of the spin-offs that, and to be honest, the main spin-off that we have right now that came out of that is a business called Kredit Hero. And that's where I'm spending from a pure sort of, it's called a sort of operational day-to-day. That's where I spend the majority of my time on. Yeah. And then I do a few other things around, some charity and goodwill stuff and support stuff.
Do you guys have is there a framework of sorts for, because I can imagine I have one of these shelves in my brain. You probably do too. Doesn't mean all the ideas are good there, but, is there some method you have for hey, let's lay a few of these out. It's this one. Is there some process you have for deciding which ones to work on? I mean, how does that play out for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's a tough one, right? Because I think when you framework it too much, and in the beginning we thought about it, it's the playbook that we create, and it needs to fit all these different criteria. Like for us, the main thing is that we've been able to, with the launch of 19 Volt and bringing a small team of just very smart people together, we've been able to sort of start to do quite a lot of sort of R&D on it, because it's very easy to have a concept on a shelf and you think it all works, but eventually, and we're not even talking about like full MVP, but just sort of like, hey, is this theoretically possible? And especially right now where a lot of these ideas have an AI or at least sort of machine learning, deep learning type of angle to it. Let's sort of, carve one of our team members out for a couple of hours or a couple of days or a couple of weeks, whatever is necessary, and just focus on this specific concept that we have and see if there's something in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. So dust it off the shelf, give it a little bit of funding, right, to make it possible. And often that funding goes more in sort of the hours of a team member that's able to do it, and then see if it's like, is there enough? Is there a spark or is there an opportunity? Right. Maybe bring something to market a little bit. Talk about it a little bit. See if there's, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Getting that feeling without having the pressure on time, without having the pressure of it needs to succeed because this is our one bet.
This is the only thing to do.
This is the only, you know what I mean? Like, I think
this is sitting behind you.
or VC behind you or whatever it is, right? And, if they've invested at that stage, it's, well done to who pitched that concept. And I think that's nice because, and I don't want to see, there's plenty of things that we start working on, didn't work out, or we're still working on it to go way slower because we got distracted or the team got so reallocated on something that's more urgent. But having that opportunity to come up and see challenges or just in general problems, you're like, hey, I got an idea on how I think I can solve this or how we can solve this. Yeah. And then having a team where you can quickly spin with, and then while you focus on your day-to-day, there's somebody who can take it on and try to develop it into a little concept or an MVP is really nice to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because you take it off the shelf in a good way.
I want to unlock a bit the concept of a team. So you have your co-founder.
Yeah.
And you have developer, you have product manager, you have DevOps. What is a team? Because the reason I'm asking, in the era of AI, how this team would look like or how it's look like today?
That's a good question. I mean, like there's, is the product? Yeah, that's me and my co-founder. Is there? So that's from that perspective, right?
Yeah.
So right now for us, team it's mainly dev. So it can be or AI related dev. It can be engineers, developers, or it's more front end based. That's sort of the main thing. We've got a group of individuals that are working on our key business, sort of Kredit Hero, as like 90% of the time, and they carve out a little bit of time on the R&D. It can also be that we need a specific skill, obviously, for this specific project, and then we get it from external.
Nice.
And that is a relatively small investment. We're not engaging with big sort of companies in that sense. It's like just finding one smart cookie.
Go to Odesk or whatever.
Yeah, like often we're trying to do it a little bit more from the network itself.
Yeah.
But so far it's been working out well. I mean, let's in all perspective, in honesty as well. Like 19 Volt is we formalized it sort of early last year, so that's still pretty young.
Yeah.
We started spinning things off up here, obviously a little bit earlier. But it's also something that is, while we're still doing these sort of smaller R&D projects, the majority of that specific team that we're talking about is not just focused on the product that we actually have in market, and that's for us Kredit Hero.
Yeah. One of the points that I'm thinking about is people that listen to us are entrepreneurs, and they're like, there are two ways that I can validate a product. Either I will go to the market, start to ask, or either I'm going to take Michel's perspective and I'm going to start to build using AI and facing the market as fast as I can. Which one of them would you say they should go with?
Yeah, I personally, I believe that, I'm not sure who came up with that quote not that long ago either, but like I really think that you need to go like build something tangible and go to market as quickly as possible. Like, it's very difficult for potential clients, but also potential investors or whatever it is, to understand something from a PowerPoint. Or don't use PowerPoint anymore, like whatever your
Canva,
your Canva, or your Miro board, or whatever you want to use.
Miro,
like
for Microsoft.
For Microsoft, no longer being used as it.
I like
So that's at least what I always feel, right? So I really believe in sort of building the product or the service or whatever it is as quickly as possible. And I think with development over at least 12 months, 24 months around the different tools, and in all honesty, also the lower cost of creating a product, obviously because of all the tools available, I don't know, like there's no reason to not do it that way.
Yeah, and I think also on top of, like, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're shifting some of that resource to affordable places for development, you kind of have more of a chance of saying, okay, we have this idea, let's just go ahead and construct it.
But it's this whole thing, it's and our team is based in the Philippines, right? Yeah. Very strategically, everybody is there.
You guys do an office? It's 100% remote, but in the Philippines?
No, so we have an office. We had obviously some places that we went, pretty much remote. At the moment, we're pulling everybody back 3 to 4 and trying to push even a little bit more. Like, the commute is not great, obviously, but right now, and especially in the early phases of the business, you just need to sit together. What doesn't help is that I'm not based there, and I'm spending quite a lot of time in Manila, obviously. But I'm based in Singapore, and I've got my family here, and sort of with kids going to like crucial years at school, so it's not the time to move them around. Yeah. But I've been on the road most of my life, right? So that's not an issue, and we'll continue to do that. And that's for that reason, spend a lot of time in Manila as well. But and that's to your point, like the cost of putting something together, an MVP, for a couple of $1,000s, you have something.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't have to be, depending on what you're building, obviously, but it doesn't have to be, it's no longer like, it needs to be a $50,000 investment.
It's a 3-month project.
It's a 3-month project. You can put something together pretty cost efficient within a couple of weeks. Right. And of course, and again, let's go back to the quote I was trying to refer to earlier, is that yes, you should be absolutely ashamed of that first product that you ever shipped. Right? Because if you're not ashamed of that, you didn't ship it early enough.
Yeah, you didn't try.
Yeah. Right? And when we launched, for example, Kredit Hero a couple of months ago, like we did that with an application flow that I'm ashamed of. Thankfully, hopefully within the next hour, actually, we're launching a new application flow, which looks a lot better, works a lot better.
But you got customers on that other one, like
it absolutely. So it works, and I looking at the analytics, and I got a extremely high drop off, right, and frustrations and things. But hey, that's customer feedback, right? But you need to I could have waited with it, and I could put a couple of designers on it, and I could have smoothed it all out, and but then I would not have been live 4 months ago with this platform, if you know what I mean. And you're never ready if you look at it from that perspective.
This one tests you, right?
But I'm asking also for for others.
No, but I think sometimes because him and I have this debates all the time, because he's working on something and it's fun, and there's always this, and I suspect some of it comes from your security background, right? Where of course you can't go play with let's experiment with the ambulance booking system. Let's experiment with your firewall or your we
don't play with that.
Yeah, you can't do that. But then there's other things. Now you're playing with money. One of my rules is as long as it's not money, health is at play. But yours is more of a.
Well, and I think you make a good point, right? And I understand your background, and I wouldn't play with that either, right? It is pretty business critical stuff like that. And when you say we play with money, it's just sort of like Kredit Hero, just to sort of simplify this a little bit, is we're technology play. So technically we are an AI-powered lending marketplace focusing on SME, right? But we are the market maker. We're in the middle. So we connect borrowers with lenders. And there's there's two main reasons why the financial transaction of the actual loan doesn't go over our platform.
So you don't have to deal with that.
So I don't deal with that.
Yeah. Exactly.
So the security element is not technically I'm just a deal maker.
Yeah.
Right. And when I'm sort of marrying A with B, they go off platform and do their own thing.
Yeah. Security, we call it transparent proxy.
Transparent proxy. Well, I do, we always we do fraud detection, we do full analytics and risk analysis, and we do all of that stuff, and we run it through all types of models, and we give our borrowers a risk analysis and advice, strategic advice, if this is a lendable borrower, yes or no. But the decision is totally in their hands. Yeah. Right. So that's I hear what you say. Like I wouldn't play with it. I wouldn't sort of launch it in the same way as we did it. Right?
No harm meant in that comment. I just meant there's more of these spectrums of like where you can experiment and just get, there's this, I won't name the company because I'm not here to bash people, but it's been written up in CNA the last week or two, and it is in Singapore. They were one of these newfangled startups to sit on top of transiting and getting your visas, I think, and getting moved, right? And there's people now that they've been put in front of Singapore as like a government thing complaint. They haven't got their items like 8 months later, the crate's missing. And I'm like, you shouldn't be experimenting on people's physical items because that's like, that's kind of a bad thing, right? But I think there's this sliding scale. But I think your point is you have these people that are ready to go. You have technology has changed a lot in how to build things. You can go from your coffee with your co-founder to the evening going, we should really try X. And if it happens to be Tuesday, you're probably Wednesday morning with this team saying, guys, one of you is going to go build X. And that's like the amazing thing about, I think, the era we're living in, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But that can be obviously across different ventures, but I think that's also within a singular venture is, I think, how you should look at your product or your service offering, right? And I think if you don't continue to sort of, just put a sort of a product mindset on, so continue to sort of not only improve, obviously, the singular offer that you have, what you start off with, but really sort of look at peripheral opportunities that you have there. And in our case, especially with Kredit Hero, there are hundreds of them. Like it's also there, like test, reiterate, go and bring it to the market. And if it doesn't bloody work, it doesn't work. And I think, for example, like Revolut. The credit card. But it's a great example of like, if you go through, maybe not Revolut in Singapore because it's all dumbed down a little bit. Kind of locked down. But if you take them in the UK or something, it's like the amount of products and services that they have and constantly
launch. Stocks, crypto, like a whole bunch of stuff. Right?
eSIM they launch now, or like there's just all these different offerings. And if you look at how they structured it, they have very little, small agile teams that are just constantly got an idea, great, put a team on it. Got an idea, great, put a team on it. Half or 70% of those projects won't succeed, but they have amazing stuff in there because of that. Right. And I think and that's where they're playing with money, so it's a little bit of a I see your sort of security brain going like, oh, what's going on here? And of course they got their, I assume at least that they got their security pinned down a little bit, although there's quite a lot of complaints about their
and they had a breach, by the way.
They had a breach. There's some issues there as well
too,
but I think the way that they progress, innovate, and just come with new things is very impressive. In all honesty.
So with Kredit Hero, what markets are you in? Like, it's a multi-country product, or
so like this. The main thing with Kredit Hero, and the reason why we started Kredit Hero, for two things. One, actually, my co-founder Scott used to run as one of his businesses, lending business in the Philippines, and knows it quite well. But it also comes at the back of, if you look at fintech investments in general, I think the majority of fintech investments have been going into sort of retail, like consumer focused, B2C. And I think sort of the B2B and especially the SME space has been significantly underinvested. If you then look into markets like the Philippines, but probably most of Southeast Asian markets, or even outside of that as well, sort of thin file markets, SMEs, where in a lot of cases they contribute maybe 60 to 65% of GDP, 80-90% of employment, but they're underserved when it comes to financial opportunities, right, to drive growth. So there's a massive liquidity gap there. So what we're just trying to do, and so that's one thing. And two, the traditional banks, not sure if you ever as an SME have been trying to get capital from a loan from a bank. It's technically impossible. Yeah. Right? They just don't like SMEs. They don't understand how to work with it. They don't know how to process it. Yeah. It takes multiple months. And if you are an established, couple of years old, you have 30, 40, 50 people working for you, and your business is growing fast, and you just need, from an expansion point of view, you need a new truck. Or let's take the Philippines, for example, where, in the professional service, like BPOs, outsourcing centers is a big business for the Philippines, right? You can ask what AI does to that, does in the future, but that's a different discussion.
It'll evolve it.
We'll evolve it. But if you're in a BPO and you just sign up a new sort of European or US based client, and you need to put 200 people on seats, and you need to buy laptops for them, and you need to train them up, and this American company, the procurement department, negotiates a 120-day payment term.
Yeah.
You just need working capital for 3 months.
Yeah.
Right? 3-4 months. That's probably what you need. Go to your bank. If you've been banking with them for the last 10 years, there's no chance.
You're probably not going to get that.
You're not going to get that.
No.
Right? So then the alternative, you go to, Johnny knows an agent that has a relationship with one specific lender. Right? You're going to pay through your teeth on interest rates, to get money. I don't want to call it loan shark rates, but it's not that far off, right? So you end up in sort of where you get your capital from. These what they call regulated non-banking lenders. They're officially SEC registered businesses, etc. But often you do one application, it takes a couple of days, couple of weeks to sort of get it all sort of processed, and then you get an offer back, and it's take it or leave it offer, right? And because you need the money, you're going to say you have to say yes, right? But we're talking about high percentages.
Yes.
So what we're trying to do is, with the launch of Kredit Hero, is like how can we make this process easier for a borrower by having a singular application that we do the full digitalization of that? Because it's not like in Australia or even in Singapore where, hey, you do a bit of an API call to the bank statement and everything's digitalized, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about scanned copies of a passbook where the finance person had been handwritten things in. Like, that's how they submit stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So we run that through 11 or 12 sort of machine learning, deep learning models to digitalize that and we sort of extract everything. We do fraud detection on it. We do full risk analysis on it, everything. And we do that within 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
Where this normally would take a lender or a bank, whoever does that, days, if not weeks, manual work of sort of extracting
2
all
weeks,
that. You know what I mean, right? Yeah. And have an office of 200 people sort of doing all the work. So we do it really quickly. We do the full risk analysis of it. And then we match that to the lenders on our platform that have shown interest in specific type of borrowers. Because not every lender does every type of borrower. Can be geographical restrictions to it, or type of business, or minimum revenue expectations, or debt to revenue ratios, or whatever it is, right? So there can be a lot of different things that for them is important. When we match it to these different lenders, it straight away can go to their credit, their decisioning team, right? So are we going to lend money to this borrower, yes or no? So we speed up the process. What it also does, so from a borrower perspective, one application reaches multiple lenders.
Yeah.
Hopefully multiple lenders come back with, they realize the faster we come back with, the bigger the chances we win this borrower. So you speed up, you improve the process, right? And because they need to come, if multiple lenders come with an offer, it's competitive pricing because they all want to win the borrower.
Yeah.
Is it transparent to all of them to see the pricing? They don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know. Okay, good.
Which is good.
Yeah.
We think it's good.
Yeah.
Right? So over time it should speed up the process. It should bring price of capital down for SME, which gives them more opportunity to grow the business. So that's the positioning of what
will you keep track of success of things as well? Like this guy paid back, because that informs your model, I guess.
100%.
Yeah.
So obviously our model grows over time that we sort of process more, applications as well as sort of results of loans. Yeah. There's a lot of sort of downstream sort of business opportunities and how we can do, the whole servicing of it, etc. Yeah. But the foundation is right now this.
Got it.
Coming back to your question on single market and multi-market, we started in the Philippines. It's a new business. We started in October last year. So only a few months live. Well received within the market, thankfully, and that's why 100% of my time goes into this at the moment. And right now in the Philippines, a lot of opportunities outside of the Philippines at the moment. we're raising with the money to sort of help with that growth and expansion as well.
Yeah. So let's say I want to borrow money. I just need to subscribe to the platform. What's the process?
Yeah, you literally just go to the website, press get started. It's about a 10-minute process to sort of fill into what actually you need. Like how much money do you need? What do you need it for? Leave some other information behind. So upload some financial statements and IDs and stuff like that, and we take it from there.
And do I need to pay something?
No, free of charge.
So where are you?
How do we make money? Yeah,
that's where I want to get to.
Yeah, that's where I want to get to. No, I mean it's pretty straightforward because lenders, for lenders, technically we're just another sort of deal flow.
Yeah, pipeline.
A pipeline. Yeah. So we take a percentage of the loan amount at the moment of disbursement.
Okay.
So we have no sort of carry on risk, etc. Just off the moment of disbursement.
Okay.
Which is a fee that they are used to pay to an agent that just hands them a stack of finance fees anyway. So it's sort of similar type of fee structure.
Yeah.
We give them a lot more value to the lender, and we believe that we give the borrower a lot more value as well because we present them to multiple lenders.
Very cool. I'm glad that's going well.
So far, so good. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
I wanna took maybe a side for we're in a Generalist podcast.
Back to our roots.
Back to our roots. The Generalist. Just had it anyway. Next time I'm gonna share with you. So I'm thinking about your career and your perspective about who you are. Are you more specialist into do things, or you're more generalist, meaning taking stuff and make things happen, or whatever you want to define it?
It's a good question. Well, I didn't call this the Specialist Podcast.
We did not. It doesn't sound as good.
It doesn't roll as nice, right? Yeah. It's sort of interesting because if I sort of look through my career, I think it's almost sort of a combination of maybe sort of like specialist in execution. I can be pretty obsessed and fixated when it comes to a specific topic, problem, business, any of that, and focus on it and deliver it and be almost like a specialist in that specific area.
Yeah.
But from a strategic point of view, I would sort of look at myself way more as a generalist and sort of a broad sort of interest, more sort of and sort of a bit of a helicopter view type model in that. Yeah, so I wouldn't sort of specifically pinpoint myself.
Well, the combination of it is, quite powerful, right? From the perspective of you do have this range, but then maybe your ability from a process perspective to focus on how you would get something done, right? Like, isn't that combination kind of lethal?
Yeah, I think so as well.
Yeah.
If you look at it from a negative point, it feels like you can't focus on one thing too long. Yeah. Like I don't know, where you could sort of more put into a wider perspective. But I'm not unhappy with sort of the mix in that, to be honest.
Keeps things interesting.
Keeps it interesting, and I think that's also since I sort of made the decision to leave S4 and focus on almost more like a portfolio approach of things in my life, not only sort of work related, but also things in my life. I feel that fits way more my personality as well, and not sort of have that one thing that consumes 98% of my life.
Yeah, makes sense.
Meaning that you're a generalist.
Well, at least I'm at the right podcast then.
Maybe. So another question we have, and I think we follow a format here because we think it gives us some structure. And one of the things, we like to have some history, things that you're doing, how you got here. One of the things we've been learning from talking to people, and I think we mean well when we do this, we want to keep making this ecosystem that we're all living in, yourself included. You got a startup in Manila, you're living here. So we're in this startup ecosystem, as I call it, like it or not. And we have good conversations with people about how we would improve it and make it better. I think one of the interesting things from your S4 experience is you were involved in a lot of deal making and buying things. I don't even know what the tally was. Did you buy companies in Southeast Asia? Was there some?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Like, what can we do collectively, and what have you seen where we can keep improving on getting more of these things bought and having more exits and having better businesses? I think one of the things you kind of hinted at that we've been on about is this crazy myopic focus we've had over the last couple of years on B2C, and then you're sitting there saying you have these massive markets in B2B that are underserved, I believe, especially in the SME thing. So that's something like that. But I'm curious for you what that might be and how you feel about it.
Yeah, like, I think it's, if I sort of like look back at my old roles and sort of partly sort of put a global hat on as well, and it includes myself, for example. Like, even though I've been living in this region for a long time, I've always had or APAC or global remits. And for me, running an APAC business, if I want to have a successful year, I needed to make sure that Australia was working, India was working, China was working, maybe Japan if you had a business there, and the rest is sort of, it doesn't move the needle.
It's not big enough.
It's not big enough. And that's a little bit the challenge, right? Yeah. And if you put from a global perspective, it's the same thing. US needs to work, maybe Germany, UK needs to work, and the rest, China needs to, so...
We all live with this.
We all live with it, right?
So that's not even second fiddle. It's like third fiddle.
Yeah. So that's the challenge. Yeah. Then the only sort of the thing that sort of, if we look at Southeast Asia specifically, had for itself that's coming is obviously sort of the growth and the size of population in general. 250, 300 million people in Indonesia. There's 80 million, or 110. What is it right now in the Philippines? It's like big numbers, right? That's something we have going for us. So I think sort of the drive towards sort of B2C is not that unexpected either, right? Because if that's the number you're...
Correct.
And I remember like back in the advertising world as well, it's like, oh, it's the year of Indonesia because it's, they're skipping broadband, they all go to mobile, it's a 250 million, like... Did it really sort of...
The CPMs never came up.
Well, no, for example, the CPMs never came up. I think the promise have never really came true, in all honesty, right? And I think that's what I see in Southeast Asia as a challenge from a startup perspective. Uh-huh. And if it's a challenge from a startup perspective, it's a challenge from an investment perspective, and it's sort of chicken and egg, obviously there. The lack of sort of big exits and opportunities in this region has been tough. The unicorns we were so proud of. I think the ecosystem has changed as well. There's been some. I don't want to talk about fishery businesses, but there's been some other challenges.
Not talk about fishing, but there's been some fraud somewhere.
Been some challenging things there as well that is really hurting. I think the startup scene and investing. I think in general in this region. So it's in honesty, it's tough. And I know you got a lot of Southeast Asia startup founders here. If I'm really honest, going through it in the last sort of a year as well, and standing a little bit more in the mud myself with it all. If I would ever do a next thing, I wonder if I would take this region as a starting point.
Yeah.
Just because of that. Because I believe that there's not a lack of talent here. There's not a lack of amazing ideas here. I think there can be a little bit more of ambitious and larger thinking, but I think that comes hand in hand a little bit with the lack of successes. That, you know what I mean? Like, and it's a bit of a cultural thing as well, and I think the lack of successes. But I see plenty of things in this region that in other regions would have taken off, supported, let it be from an investor point of view, or just picked up by the community way faster and more successful than it's being done here. So it deserves a lot more. That makes sense.
So you think I'm trying to point out, no putting guilties, no guilty anyone. But do you think it's more the VCs, the investments? Because if there is no problem of talent, there is no problem of finding, the relevant ideas, what would you think need to be fixed?
I mean, like it's a chicken and egg. Like I do think that there are, I think founders in this region can be a little bit more. Yeah, I would say like sort of. I want to sort of like
riskier.
I would say like, and I want to say ballsier, but that's probably not the right word as well. But like, stand a little bit more for what they do. But I think a big challenge is obviously the availability and access to capital. Yeah. Like if we're really honest, and I think VC is already a risky business in general. Right, so being an LP or whatever it is, right? So that's, and I don't think there's a lot of sort of risk capital available in this region, and that also and it's all chicken egg, right? Because it also comes because there's a lack of sort of successful exits. Yeah, and successful exits create more, successful LPs into the VCs as well. So it's like a washing machine that doesn't, it's different on the West Coast or whatever it is, which we all know that, a lot of that capital is being invested back into the ecosystem.
Yeah.
You just don't see that here as much. And, like there's plenty of VCs, they say that they're early stage, but then still asking you for demonstrable ARRs and
action that more looks like late stage.
Yeah, more looks like late stage, and that's fine. And I think that needs to be there as well. Yeah. But I think we're sort of missing a little bit that earlier stage. In all honesty, there's plenty of companies that are trying to do it with early stage sort of programs, etc. to help support that. Some of them better than others, but I'm not saying that there's not opportunity, but it's just tough. It's
tough market.
Yeah. It's tougher now than probably ever as well. Yeah.
Well, I think, your focus on B2B and in Fintech and in SME, I think shows some light towards possibilities in the region that look to me more concrete than say some of the B2C ideas.
I think I agree. I think the challenge that, if I purely sort of look at it from a Kredit Hero perspective is that, OLPs like online lending platforms are not new. And there are tons of them out there. A lot of them still focus, to be honest, on retail as well. And I don't want to say none of them, the majority of those haven't been so far successful for investors, right? Yeah. It's very difficult for them to run it into sort of a profitable book. Because being a balance sheet lender is just not easy. Let it be retail or SME or whatever it is. So I think that sort of experience for a lot of the VCs doesn't really help us. Although we are not an OLP, we're not a balance sheet lender. We fundamentally believe that we've taken the cherries out and we got all the good things and none of the bad, right? But you're being sort of pushed a little bit into the same bucket as, you're in the lending business. Tick. We don't want more exposure in our fund because of... previous
but lending can be a very good business. So.
It is, and I think especially if you don't take the risk like we do. So
you're getting paid on the transaction.
You get paid on the transaction. Yeah. So I think again, you don't want to be the NLP. You don't want to have to deal with that. That's for sure. But anyway, it's
a good discussion. There's no easy answer to this, but I do feel there's been a little bit of a move towards more B2B and more things that are revenue generating early on, and I think your model for experimenting this and making it happen is kind of leads to that, which I think does make it different than the normal startup path. Even if you are still wanting to raise money and get the growth capital, doesn't take away from maybe how it came to be. Right?
No, 100%. And that's why our story is a bit different as well, and we're pretty confident that we'll close around pretty soon. And technically, we started a few weeks ago, so it's all very early stage. But we have, and that's a little bit of what the foundation of our business was. Obviously, we developed MVP, we self-funded it, we brought it to market, we had traction, we have revenue, and then it's like, hey, okay, it's we sort of have proof of concept. We're product market fit. Not at scale, obviously, yet, but product market fit. We have. As a marketplace, market maker, you have two sides. So we have demand and supply. Both of them like what we're doing. Both of them, we know there's a need for the other. Yeah. Right? We add value to both sides.
Everybody's winning.
Everybody's winning. We have a very clear path to profitability on a unit economics pretty quickly. What we need is throw oil on the fire. Yeah. To be honest, and going with that to a market to raise capital, turns out not easy.
So are you raising?
Turns out not easy, but at least easier to get sort of access to capital. If that makes sense.
You need to get a hold of Michelle. Michelle's raising. Yes. Yeah. It'll happen.
No, I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, it'll happen. Yeah. Awesome.
No, I think generally speaking about the ecosystem, Michel, you are my hero.
No.
Yeah.
No. I need to talk about security with you. No.
Good. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
So we have our routine.
All right.
We asked our normal questions. You want to start? Or?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll do it if you want.
So I know you are like 25, not just joking.
29, but 29. I appreciate it.
Close.
Yeah. Let's go back to your 20 years old. What you would tell him?
Probably be less selfish.
Why?
Well, I think I probably went through a couple of years that there's a podcast, right? So we can like, I probably didn't really give a shit about other people in all honesty. And I just did what I wanted to do and probably burn a couple of bridges along the way. And I think probably only when you're sort of, a bit older and you sort of reflect a little bit and you got kids, you're like,
oops.
Especially like I got teenage girls, right? So there's a lot of stuff you sort of recognize and you're like, yeah, I don't like that she's doing. And you're like, I did exactly the same. Yeah. And then you start sort of reflecting that. And I think I could have done that probably a little bit better.
I think a lot of 20-year-old males can be selfish. I think. Yeah.
Probably as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing like kids to teach you how you see yourself, right?
Yeah, I know. It's
pretty amazing.
It's a confronting one. That's how you.
How many kids do you have? Two.
Two. Yeah.
Got it.
Nice.
Yeah. Very cool. I'm guessing you work out, but maybe you can tell us more about.
Guessing?
Yeah, I'm guessing.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. I'm guessing.
Wow. Looking good.
But you also mentioned the being burnt out, and so I think we asked this question on kind of two axes. One is just the physical. How do you stay on top of your game, but also mentally, and you got kids, you got how do you juggle all this and stay sane?
Yeah, it's for me, it's the mental thing. Like I'm not I'm not every morning I'm doing I'm not that. Like unfortunately, and probably I should do it a little bit.
I heard this as a kid. You're like this. We have someone. It was Chris Sacca on Tim Ferriss, but this one I fell off my chair when he said this. He says, when I hear the guy grinding his own matcha leaves in the morning, and even on, he goes, clearly they have no primary school kids because there's no way in hell you have a morning routine like what you hear when you have young kids.
Or they're made take the kids.
Yeah, well, that's one of the benefits here, right? That's for sure. Now, so on the mental side, it's for me the mental balance is being able to do the things that I do right now. So I'm sort of mentally balanced since, honestly, since left sort of S4 and sort of being able to do what I do right now. And I'm balanced by that and energized by it, etc. The sports thing for me became very important sort of around that time as well, when I sort of needed a bit of sort of structure in that. And the way that for me I'm doing it is, because when I was my first few years in Singapore especially, I was a little bit of a typical hobby-dobby, chubby expat drinking beer every day in Club Street, and sort of that was me.
On planes.
And all of that. And I sort of found probably about 9 or 10 years ago, 8, 9 years more of a balance, and I lost a lot of weight and sort of got more into it. And it goes with up and downs, obviously. But for me, what works best is I just need 2 or 3 times a year, I need to sign up for a random race of something.
Oh, okay.
And because that keeps me in check. I do once a year, run a marathon. So I do the majors. And that's the thing I do with my wife is I run 1 marathon. I'm not a runner. You're a runner. I'm not built I'm 95 kilos, not running fit, right? But once a year, I run a marathon. So I did New York last November. Nice. I did Chicago the year before.
Nice.
But that is for me oh shit, if I don't train for this thing.
So it forces you into
It forces me into this block of,
I guess, in many months before the race too.
So, and that's why I take it, and that does it for a couple of months. Then I'm totally done with running. I'm not running the rest of the year because I hate running then all of a sudden, right? But then there's either a high rocks, or I'd every year I go with a couple of friends. We go on this big ski touring trip. That's a full on week. Day, a couple of hours, backing, and if you're not fit, and you don't want to be the slowest guy in the group either, right? So there's this sort of peer pressure that sort of forces me then for a couple of months to train. So then I'm sort of have covered 70% of the year. You know what I mean? And then there's a little bit, you drop off a little bit, you got your summer holidays, and you got a little, so for me, as long as I have 2 or 3 of these events of different sports, that's what sort of keeps me going. And then that is important for me. And it's a balance thing. Doesn't matter till what time I've been working late or whatever it is. My morning routine is very structured. Mm-hmm. So I know I wake up at a certain time, somewhere between 4:35, whatever it is, do a bit of work. But then at 6:15, I jump on my bike, go to the gym, spend an hour and 15 in the gym, cycle to my coffee shop, have a little coffee there on my own, catching up on the news, go that's structured.
Yeah.
And I can do it because the kids are teenagers, and one of them is at university now, and the rest will take care of itself, obviously. You can't do that with young kids, but that is my routine. And then I come home, take a shower, blah, 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 and the rest of the day starts. Yeah. And if I don't have that morning block, I don't feel the energy in the morning that I need to get through the day. I also can't move my workout to the afternoon, for example, because then I give myself the whole day to find an excuse why I can't do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I just need it. I need to wake up.
I gotta do it right away.
Gotta do it right away.
Correct.
And then I'm super energized, have a great day. And then also I don't feel guilty if I go for a beer at the end of the day, by the way.
Yeah, but that's okay.
So finding that balance is important.
But I think a big one too is you're saying like you're also doing something you love to do. And I think that's missed on a lot of people that they're constantly making up for the fact they don't actually like what they do, which I know people are in that situation. I've been in it. And so you have all these things you're trying to do so it's like a huge win to just be, I like what I do, right?
You're absolutely right, Michael. And that's the foundation of, and I'm sort of blessed in that way that I'm able to do that right now. And it comes with its own stress and challenges and you name it all, of course. But I'm a million times happier than how my life was structured a couple of years ago. Yeah. And that's, hopefully that expresses itself in how I feel, that expresses myself hopefully how I am as a husband, that expresses how I am as a dad, how I am as a friend and family member and whatever
in business
it is.
Too. Yeah.
And in the business as well. Yeah. So you're 100% right. That's the main thing.
Yeah. And I know there's no easy way like you snap your fingers. We've all been through a bad job or a lull in our careers, but it is amazing when you're like, I like what I do. Like it's a huge win, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Last one.
Yes.
A good book or a TV show
or podcast.
Beside
consumption.
Beside a Generalists Podcast.
Beside the Generalists Podcast. Yeah, and this is I always tell myself I need to read more. And I find myself the only places where I actually create the time for myself to read is when I'm on holiday. And then I can go through a couple of books and try to not make it work related. Just some random stuff, just to sort of get distracted by it a little bit. Which is weird because all the recommendations you get are work related books.
Business related.
Business related. So you're like,
because this is what we like. This is what we like.
I know, but then it's also trying to switch off sometimes a little bit, which is hard enough without the book. So and the books is a bit, in all honesty, it's a bit light at the moment. Podcasts, I think it's very sort of what topic is relevant for me at that time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of investor VC related, sort of like 20 VC where we talked about it earlier, right? It's something that I listen to on bike rides or whatever it is. But it can also be, I'm about to go on a ski trip with a couple of friends again. This is a period that I read up a lot on new things in skiing, new podcasts. So I just take a subject that I'm just sort of focus on at that time and then find matching podcasts.
Consume something around
that. It can be a YouTube's or something like that. Yeah. Not much of a TV show or Netflix away, a little bit on planes mainly. Yeah. That's probably it. Yeah. Not very excited on that front.
That's all right.
Okay.
Well, I think
nobody's perfect.
I think it all sets you up for your trips and your passions.
That's the main thing.
Yeah, but that's a big deal. Right?
Yeah, and it's sort of go deep and hard on that then.
Yeah. Where are you going skiing?
Whistler.
Oh, nice. That's a beautiful area.
Yeah.
I miss that part of the world. All right. Well, we got to wrap up. Michel, thanks for doing this.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Learned a lot.
Good luck with the raise and Kredit Hero and the ski trip. Have fun.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye.